hopefully go live. So we'll see what happens here, because this will be interesting. I don't know if this is going to work or not, or whether the feed will be terrible or not, but we'll find out soon enough.
Pay all this money, Rich, to be the tech wizard. And,
I know. Well, let's see what happens when I press transition. And now we should be live. Should be. John's gone smaller. I don't know why that is. Let me make him bigger again. I'm moving all.
Can you make me bigger?
I'm moving all the things on screen. You're not supposed to do it this way.
Unpaste Sonny Bill Williams' body on Phil's head. Very lifelike.
Somebody said to me today at an appointment I was at, can we take your height? And I said, you don't need to. It's 6'4". It always has been.
Have we got 100 million people watching this as we're watching Sonny Bill Williams or whatever the...
Million, and it's generating $4 billion worth of publicity.
They just make these numbers up. I don't know how.
Yep.
If you can watch, if you are watching live on YouTube, I mean, I've got it on my TV here. It appears not to be working, but if it is working, let us know in the chat. It is there. Apparently, we've got 20 viewers, which doesn't sound very good, does it? But if this doesn't work live, we'll just do it again properly. Well, you'll be able to watch it again properly. For some reason, your window keeps getting smaller, John. I don't know what's up with this thing, but never mind.
Maybe that helps.
Yeah, fingers crossed we are live and people can watch us. If you are watching, please say hello. It's another episode of 4020 Live, which is actually live this time via the magic of the internet. Excuse me. Good start. After a busy week of rugby league action, well, 4 games anyway, obviously, because Wakefield Leeds, the main event, had to be cancelled. But the good news is Wakefield and Catalans all passed with flying colours their tests. So everything's back on at the weekend.
Saved you getting a prediction wrong this week.
It did. Apparently we're not on YouTube, but I don't know. I'm going to try. I don't know. It's not working. Anyway, let's talk about the action off the field first, because there's been some transfer news, and it involves Callum Watkins, who has left Toronto Wolfpack, as has everyone these days, and ended up at the Salford Red Devils. And I guess the main hope from this move is that he can find the form that he had not too long ago.
Of course, the irony is that should Toronto be allowed back in the competition, they won't have any players. But first of all, happy birthday, Wales Rugby League. I think we should open the show by saying whatever it is in Welsh, but thank you for all that you've done for the sport. I'm sorry we haven't always reciprocated that to you. The first international was Wales playing the All Gold. So thank you, Wales. Thanks for all the wonderful players that you provided, and I have a very happy birthday, which is nothing to do with Callum Watkins, other than he's going to be playing in red now. I think it's a brilliant signing, both for Salford and for Callum. I think they promoted it superbly with him going back home. Clearly, a Mancunian, played his first rugby for Langworthy Reds. Leeds snapped him up when I think he was 12, because they'd seen that he was probably going to develop into something a little bit special. So it works for everybody. And as you say, Salford gets a potential star player in a key position. He comes back into the sport, which is great, and you would hope that the environment will be such that with the arms that are clearly being put round him by the announcement, he gets back to his very best form, and Super League needs the star players. And thought he was great when he was summarising on Sky the other week, where he almost pleaded for somebody to come forward and get him, and actually probably this is the best option for him, and good. Well done, Salford.
An exciting come and get me play on the telly. I see there was a race for his signing, according to the press last night, with was it Hull KR and Rugby Union? Is that just Rugby Union, as in any old agent will say Rugby Union are interested in Michael Elliott, come and sign him, please?
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Probably the NRL interest. Every player in Super League has NRL interest, but I think, as Bill said, it's great for Salford. He's a local boy. Usually, they lose their best local juniors, and obviously they did lose him to Leeds when he was very young, but they've got him back now, and hopefully he gets back to. He's obviously going to have a long break with no rugby league, so by the time he plays next year, he should hopefully be back to his best. And I'm sure the fans will get around him, and he's still relatively young, so he should have a few years left in his legs. And yeah, you have to do wonder about Toronto, though, as Phil said, with Blake Wallace going to leave for next year, Callum Watkins, if they are around and if they are in Super League or even in the Championship, they're basically going to need to rebuild a whole new squad.
Hopefully now the sound is working. Now I've pressed something, but fingers crossed on that one. Thanks to Karsten and Tim and Mr. Fozzie and Barnstonworth and Gary the Viking, who are watching live this evening on YouTube.
So did they miss that heartfelt happy birthday tribute to Wales because they couldn't hear it?
No, I think they heard it. I think so.
I'm not saying it again. I know somebody in Wales who would fall over if I did it twice.
I'm hoping the echoes have now stopped. I realised that we had the audio on 3 times. You don't need it 3 times, just the once. So Callum Watkins is in. Looks like Luther Burrell, though, he's on his way out. The exciting signing from Rugby Union last year. Well, it was exciting for a bit, but I don't think it'd be fair to say Steve Price hasn't really known what to do with him, or I guess perhaps not even wanted him.
The difficulty is, again, where was he going to naturally fit into that team? Because I think we all thought he would come as a centre, and it seemed that the limited opportunities he got were more at second row. I guess it would have been a great signing probably about 3 years earlier. It was always a tough ask for somebody over 30 to come and play the game at the very highest level. It generated some publicity. It would have been nice to see him given more of a run in the team. I think the writing was on the wall when Greg Inglis was signed by Warrington. I think he thought, well, hang on a minute. Luther Burrell was supposed to be a ready-made player in that position, and here they are getting GI, which clearly GI is a big sell. But yeah, maybe Luther for Toronto start the campaign now.
They need to not repeat the same mistakes, Phil. Not put money on players.
This is rugby league. We've been making the same mistakes for 125 years.
No, I think the thing with Luther Burrell, I mean, obviously Steve Price has got to pick the team that he thinks is going to win games. He's either not proving it in training, or he's not. The games that he has played, he's not made a massive impact, has he? And I think it just shows how hard it is, not only at the elite level in rugby league, but to switch from rugby union. It's just, I've interviewed Luther Burrell a couple of times, and he was saying about the fitness demands, and the cardio. He struggled, to make that switch. And obviously Warrington have got a very good team as it is. Maybe if he was at a lower end team, he might get more game time. But, I think it's good that he's not sort of just given a spot and said, here you go, play every week. You've got to earn that spot. That's the way it should be. So maybe less signings for kind of marketing sake. But on that flip side, it's only is it half the wage, or first year of the wage doesn't count towards the salary cap. So, it's Simon Moran's money, and I guess if he wants to splash it and it doesn't unbalance their cap, then go right ahead. I
think the other issue is not having had reserve grade for all the reasons we've gone over. He didn't have chance to learn his trade. Yeah. So even if he got to that right level of fitness, if I'm Steve Price and I've got no way of seeing him play or test him out, and this is where probably dual regs didn't work as well, because would he have got as much value playing in the championship? He probably needed to see him playing in reserve grade, and hasn't had the chance to do that. So they've had to make a decision before the dispensation's run out, and it looks as though he will be surplus to requirement, which is a shame. We did get some good PR on the back of it. There were some newspapers that were prepared to take articles who wouldn't otherwise probably run a rugby league story, and no doubt we will talk about SBW's return, but I think he's been absolutely fantastic value for money, and I don't care if camera focuses on him tying his shoelaces up before he goes out there. It is true that the stars sell, and Burrell in that instant when his star shone when he came over was somebody who got us publicity we wouldn't otherwise have got.
They should have sent him on loan to North Wales or to Cumbria, and that would have been a real rude awakening from Twickenham in front of 80,000 people to the North Wales Crusaders in League One.
It's good to see Owen Farrell looks like he's angling for a move to Wigan with his tackling technique at the weekend.
Or Cronulla.
Yeah, it sort of upset someone. We're only 10 minutes into this shambles of a program. I thought it upset someone. Hopefully, people could hear that. So Luther Burrell looks like he's going. Callum Watkins is moving. Sonny Bill Williams and he's back. His first game of rugby league since whenever it was, because obviously nothing else counts. Although in fairness, I didn't see it, but was it better than his debut for Toronto?
Yeah, well, I think it was it 13 minutes, 14 minutes. He probably didn't make as many mistakes. It was marginally better. Look, he's obviously not match fit, and they're smartly using him as a middle. He's not the player he was when he left the Roosters. Let's be honest. He barely played Super Rugby last year. He's getting on a bit, even though he's in fantastic physical condition. He's not the dynamic player he was at the Bulldogs, so he's not going to be beating 5 players a line and flick passing out the back. I think if you can use him as a middle, much like Gareth Ellis has been used by Hull FC the last couple of years, and use his leadership and professionalism off the field and around the culture of the club, that'll be the best way to use him, and I'm sure Trent Robinson will be doing that.
I think there's 2 issues here. One is what can he bring to the team on the field, and for me, that 15 minutes he was on there was the portion of the game where the Roosters actually won it. It was really close when he came on. He was there for the try that settled the game. Couple of offloads in the middle of the field. I thought he had a galvanising influence on those around him. There was a genuine feel amongst his own players when he came on the field that he was giving them a bit of a lift, I think. But all of that, the other hype that some have criticised that I just can't buy into is we need as many superstars and news stories as we can get. And this went all around the world. This is one of the very few names that when he plays rugby league, it resonates. And yeah, clearly it was the last game of the day. And everything he did in the lead up to the game, there was a camera on him. And they were even switching from live action to see him warming up in the dressing room. And every time he stood up and scratched his nose, the camera was on him. Is he coming on yet? Has he got a card in his hand? I think that's brilliant. That, to me, that is how you build up personalities. And if this sport loses out on one thing, is we know we've got some fantastic people and stories and athletes that play this game, but we don't have a way of telling the story. He actually dominated the media rankings, and there was something that I know we can laugh at 28 zillion people watched him, but some of the Media Week rankings seem to show that game got more eyes on it than would normally happen. And even if it's one more pair, I think that justifies all the hype around him. And actually, it's probably a lot more than that.
Just on the sole camera, I think the last player to have the sole camera focus on him was Jared Hayne when he came back from the NFL and joined the Gold Coast Titans. Obviously, let's just hope it doesn't end up like with Hayne and, alleged vagina biting and the rest down the line. So, yeah, let's just cross our fingers and hope for that.
So this is what happens when we go live. People heard
that's only reported fact.
Alleged.
Sending it back to the NFL.
Sorry, I hadn't had my tea yet. I just had no, never mind.
As mentioned, the good news from the latest round of COVID-19 tests, Wakefield and Catalans have all passed with flying colours, which means the games are back on Wakefield versus Hull on Thursday, Catalans versus Wigan in Catalan on Saturday. One Wigan player has tested positive, but hasn't had any contact with anyone from Wigan or Hull KR, which we can talk about in a moment. So that appears to be okay for their games. And of course, Hull have got Castleford in the Challenge Cup as well on Sunday. What's this story going around about people being fined for high fives? Is this a genuine thing that people have picked up on the internet and run with, or is it nonsense?
I don't think you are supposed to high five because obviously it's it's hands, so that's why the fist, the elbow bump or the fist bump is preferred. But in terms of fines, I'll have to double check that. It does sound a little bit. No one seems to have been following that anyway. There's been group hugs and love-ins after those tries, hasn't there? So
And after games, that's the other thing I don't understand. That even amongst opposition players, there is still hugs and maybe not for as long, and they've perhaps been told that there's make it brief. But again, it's the message going out there. I think that the players have to buy into whatever the protocols are, and I have every sympathy for them. That even in everyday life, it's really hard to know what the protocols are. But Sean Wayne said it, and I think Sam Tompkins has again gone on record. Steve McNamara has said it. We just have to do whatever it takes, and if that means that we're not seen to high five, then need to do it.
If we're finding players,
certainly shouldn't be vagina biting on the field. That is for sure. Check the lyrics of Penny Lane.
Just Google Jared Hayne and vagina, and you'll find out all you need to know.
You see what happens?
It's gone off the rails already, hasn't it?
We behaved last week, and now it's all gone to pot. And I don't know.
We're playing for the crowd. If only there was one.
I think what I was going to say now. That's it. If we are going to fine people for not behaving, and these two young lads from the England football squad getting in trouble today, only taking the example of one of their seniors at Man City, in fairness. But I digress. If we're fining players for not behaving or whatever, shouldn't we be really having a word with employees of rugby league clubs who go on social media and pretty much just saying that COVID's a hoax and we shouldn't wear masks? Isn't that more of a problem?
Yes, I couldn't possibly comment, having not seen or know to whom you could possibly be referring. Everybody's in this together. I think listening to coaches at Wigan, at Leeds, I think Michael Carter's the latest one coming out saying, we are virtually on a precipice, that we probably are one more postponed game away from it having serious implications as to whether the season can be finished in a manner in which clearly we would like it to be. I think the one thing that does surprise me is that a lot of fans on social media want to know if there's a contingency plan if things go awry further than where they are at the moment. I mean, I would say there are a lot of those who criticise governing bodies, but there absolutely will be a contingency plan. It's just that we don't know at the moment what it is. And if we think that, people like Robert Elston are sat there drinking coffee all day and not thinking about the potential options for more games being called off, then we're not giving them the credit that they deserve. There will be a number of scenarios that everybody will be aware of. And it's just you don't put it in the public domain until you need to. But the interesting question is, what would you do at the moment to give some kind of integrity to the competition, bearing in mind that there probably isn't enough time, and because it involves Catalan in 3 of the games, there probably isn't the space in the fixture list, even where we are now, for everybody to play 22 rounds. So what would you do? Here's my suggestion that you didn't even ask for. That as of tomorrow, every game that hasn't been played should be deemed 0-0. It's nobody's fault. We've still got enough of the season. We're not at the hoped for halfway point yet to say that whatever those matches are, it'd be very, very difficult for the teams involved not to say that isn't a fair and equitable outcome, in terms that there isn't really a form line at the moment. That, if you are a team like Huddersfield that 1 week only have 16 fit players available, or if you are a team like Wigan who have one of those weeks where you're absolutely flat, admittedly against a supercharged Hull KR side, then to give both teams a 0-0 scoreline and a point, it's not going to radically alter the table at this stage. It's not going to rule a team out of making the top 4. But if we could start from this weekend's games with everybody equal, I reckon that's the best way ahead. And you can now disagree.
Well, I'm hoping I'm not on mute now, which apparently I'm muting myself, which is quite a clever thing to do. I am learning how to do this. I'm not quite sure how it works. Maybe I have to mute myself when Phil speaks. That might be the key. I said last week on Twitter when someone brought it up. It was another journalist mentioned, how are we ever going to get this season fitted in before it has to finish at some? Are we going to have to extend the season and all this and the other? I'm thinking, we just play as many games as we can. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because all that matters is getting enough games in for Sky. We can work out and stick asterisks next to whoever wins the grand final. It doesn't matter.
I'll come back to you on the Sky bit in a minute, but what would you two do? Just would you play percentages then? Just play as many games as you can, points per game or percentages wins, or is there any merit in 0-0 draws?
I'd do something, but I just don't know what.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, you kind of wonder why they didn't sort of follow the Warriors model and bring Catalans into the country, and try and. I mean, obviously it's going to be a very expensive undertaking, but obviously there is a loan of £16 million that could be accessed, and whether you create a bit of a stronger bubble in terms of set hotels, the teams could be in and out either on match days or either. But I think as Bill said, like shortening the season would make sense, because that seems like a lot of games to be played. And if the end result is literally we're having 3 or 4 serious injuries from each team in every game, and then they're playing 3 or 4 days later, then players are just going to get churned up and spat out. It's not fair. The standard isn't going to be great if that happens. And you look at the Huddersfield St Helens game. I mean, it was like St Helens were playing an under-18s team. It was one-way traffic. So yeah, I think cutting back the amount of fixtures and maybe declaring them null and void is a decent idea.
On the television question, where you said as long as we play enough games for Sky, I was speaking to someone from Sky on Friday, and they were saying, actually, we're not making any extra demands of the sport. We are only contracted to play, to show 2 games a week. And at the moment, we're showing 4 or 5. Normally, we would have to set up at various different grounds. We're doing it at one venue. So there's actually a cost saving at the moment for Sky. We are oversupplying them with matches, and when the football starts this weekend, our slots will not suddenly expand to take loads of games. We'll get what we're given, and I think we have fulfilled virtually everything they've asked of us in August, to the point where they had the 8 NRL games when they were only going to take 3 originally. They then dropped the NRL games, bought in Super League games. We've rearranged fixtures to give them more than what they'd anticipated on their original schedules. So I'm not sure it being driven by Sky is necessarily, we haven't already fulfilled to the best of our ability the obligation that we've had between when we resumed and where we are now. So I'm not sure that is as much of an issue as some people think it is.
I know nothing, you see. I just tend to pontificate about these things on social media and sometimes get it right and mostly get these things wrong. So if that's the case, then that's a good thing. I mean, the advantage we've had with these double headers, and I know we haven't got crowds in, and I know they've had limited crowds at the Union. I know Harlequins had some people in to watch whatever they were doing at the weekend. At least with these no crowd scenarios, we are saving Sky the hassle of going around grounds and setting up and de-rigging when they can do 4 games in 2 days. So we are doing something quite good at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're appreciative of the fact that Rugby League has been flexible in its approach, not only in terms of single venues, but actually moving fixture times and trying to find alternative opponents at very short notice. You can't imagine that would have happened in too many other sports. You can imagine going to Premiership football and going, right, Manchester United, instead of playing at Arsenal today, you're playing at Manchester City. You know what short shrift that would have got. So yeah, I think Sky won't make a huge deal about wanting vast amounts of money back if every game that was scheduled isn't played at some stage. And at this stage, we weren't going to get any games from France, but all being well, Wigan will be going there at the weekend, and let's hope that everybody who's tested positive at the Dragons, who have now had a round of negative tests and are back training again, don't start showing any symptoms. Let's hope nobody from Wigan, other than the one person who clearly has been isolated today, is testing positive. So let's assume Wigan go. There's going to be 5,000 people in the stadium for our first game with crowds, but it's going to be shown on Sky. Now, that game wasn't originally earmarked to be shown on Sky. So again, I don't know who's doing the production of it. I would be very surprised if Sky are flying a crew out there. So that means that, again, we're further along with the broadcast of games in Perpignan than we were at the start of the season. And Sky have got another slot filled with that match. So yeah, maybe it isn't all as doom and gloom on the broadcasting front. Now would be a great time to be negotiating a new deal, I think.
Well, while Robert's not making the coffees, he can go do that, can't he, in his swanky Manchester city centre location where the Super League offices are.
I do hope he gets his coffee from Pot Kettle Black. He's got to do his bit to keep the Super League players going. Free advert there, John.
Free advert. Is that TV's John Wilkins that people didn't realise had been on TV before he was on Sky the other week? Oh, that's good.
The very same.
I mean, I look at the cricket, John. They had a game yesterday in the T20 was abandoned halfway through because someone tested positive for COVID-19. So I guess we haven't had that situation yet, but we're doing the best we can with the resources we've got, and there are going to be failures, and we just have to keep dealing with it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, no one's ever been in this situation before, have they? And particularly trying to run professional sport in these circumstances. So there's got to be some give and take and some trial and error, and I think some patience from all quarters. Because we are living in uncertain times.
You're a devotee of the NFL, aren't you, Rich? That comes back, is it this weekend or next weekend?
This weekend, I believe so, yes.
And are they playing with crowds in stadia or not?
Some are, some aren't, depending on various local...
Whether they vote Republican or not, yeah.
Are they allowed to bring guns in the stadiums as well, because that's, right to bear arms or arm bears, whichever you like to put it.
That's why the wrestling's going on in Florida with small amounts of people there, because the people who fund
Fort Ridge.
Well, I know. The people who fund it are Republicans. We don't want to talk about politics because we'll get in trouble again.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
trouble's our middle name.
Donald Trump funded and closed down the American Football League at one point, so what can you do? Is there anything else we need to talk about before we talk about the actual games that are going that went on last weekend? I'm trying to think of what's happened in the exciting world of rugby league. I see Leah signing millions of players. They're signing Benji Marshall, apparently, according to... they're going to look into signing, which is the same as Wakefield trying to sign Jonah Loma again,
I think if you're Benji Marshall and you get an offer from Lee, you retire. You don't go to Lee. That would be a sad way to end his career, wouldn't it?
Benji Marshall is going to New Zealand Warriors.
Yeah, you've got the tip.
To end his career.
Yeah, nice. Well, last time we went to New Zealand, it was pretty unsuccessful at the Auckland Blues, but that would be a nice postscript way because he's a legend of the sport and he's a legend of New Zealand Rugby League, and I think he's still got a bit to offer. If you're a Super League club, you would be making attempt because he's a very accomplished media performer as well. But if you look at the New Zealand halves at the moment, they need him, Phil, because they're going pretty well with the young half back in there with Cody Nikarima. They're playing very well, the Warriors, at the moment.
I think the interesting thing about the Championship is that we are starting to see some movement now for next year in terms of either re-signings at clubs or announcements of who is going to be moving where, and I think that's if those clubs can't play, and clearly the only other news story is we're not now going to get the competition where it was going to be called the next Shield out of the cupboard competition. Then how do you keep your season ticket holders, involved in what you're doing and enthused about what the future might hold? Announce a couple of signings or some re-signings, and it is good to see a lot of the clubs involved now in transfers and it's great. Martin Ridyard has gone to Swinton today, I believe, which I think for Swinton is another fabulous signing, and it's great if every club Now, I think Dave Scott going to Coventry Bears as player coach is a really significant signing. Whilst Coventry may not lace a boot in anger this year, if I'm a Coventry fan, and I know that you are, Rich, you're fan number one, that would have me enthused. I could wait until 2021, for the dawning of the next era. So it's good that, a lot of clubs are moving in the transfer market, and that's great. I just wouldn't, I'm not sure starting the 4020 Cup so they can play on Boxing Day and New Year's Day may be the answer. At this stage, we don't know what the virus is going to look like, and we keep being told that winter is a key time for it. And but you wouldn't want to set something up and then be scuppered by the weather. So I'd just put all my eggs in the 2021 basket now.
The 4020 Cup? You mean the 1895 Cup? We're not sponsoring that. We don't want to take anything away from Mr. Beaumont.
How do you know we're not sponsoring it?
Is it a new one? We're the new sponsors.
But if we just keep calling it the 4020 Cup, eventually, like on the podcast, in print, and on social media,
it'll happen.
Yeah.
We have bid exactly the same as Papa John's for the naming rights.
I mean, the good news is our name will be on the shirts of the Wakefield Trinity ladies in 2021. It was going to be in 2020, but obviously, no season. So, we're going to have to watch the Super League show tonight. You realise this?
Indeed.
Speaking of,
Phil, Rich,
they've got someone good on the as a guest.
Ah, right. Sorry.
Speaking of the Super League show, I read the article last week about was it not nationwide? And here's some facts for you. Here's some facts, listeners. The Women's Super League show, or football show, whatever they call it, was back on last night because the women's football's back. That covers English women's football and was shown last night in England, right? Okay, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, none of which have a dog in the fight, so to speak. Now, when London won Super League last year, Super League showed not in London on a Monday night. The other thing is, and this is not a criticism of the people who make the Super League show, the people involved on the Super League show, but the rights agreement with the highlights program for Super League is that it can be shown after 6 o'clock on a Sunday. That is a fact. I just want to put that out there for people to know. But that's that. Other than that, we need to talk about Toronto because we've been asked about it. Tim's asked about it. GWAL TV, I think, because I can't read my screen. Who's this new guy who's going to save Toronto and bring them back to success?
He is a Canadian businessman who apparently is a contact of David Argyle's, not of Eric Perez's. He seems to have some family money and be a CEO of a cosmetics company and director of a few other healthcare companies. That's about all I've been able to find out so far. An original shareholder in the club, but I don't know how much I don't imagine that original shareholding is very much. I mean, it does seem very odd, the whole shareholding, and Bill may know more. But it seems like David Argyle had 50 to 60% of the club, but then there was like 49 other shareholders, which just seems absolute madness. But obviously, I'm not Warren Buffett, so I'm an expert in shareholding in clubs.
I think the Argyle family clearly controlled Toronto 1.
Yep.
And the other investors didn't have a huge amount of say, even once the juggernaut had started rolling. Now, I don't know David or his family at all well. I think I met him on maybe 2 or 3 occasions, but it strikes me that it was his way. He was the kind of owner that I'm the major shareholder. This is how we do it. So I think some of the other smaller shareholders who may have come in under the impression that perhaps they would be involved in the planning of the club going forward felt a tiny little bit disenfranchised. I don't know if that's fair or not. And I think this is one of these minority shareholders who feels that now the way is clear perhaps to do things slightly differently, but the brand has been established. It might be a useful investment. Clearly, at this stage, to get Toronto up running and back in the league, it's not going to cost the same as it's cost David to date. So it may well be that whoever this gentleman is sees it as actually a relatively good and timely investment. But I'm sure that there are, to me, this isn't about Toronto. This is about what does the sport do next, and not what does it do next in 2021. But this is the time to sit down. I think we discussed this a fair bit and decide what it wants to be. Because if it needs 12 teams next year, how does it go about doing that? It's got two choices in, you would think. One would be to involve some kind of a licensing system to bring up a team from the championship that hasn't been able to prove themselves on the field. So it's not promotion in that sense of the word, or it brings back Toronto with whatever assurances they need. But whatever we're doing, if it's either of those two options, it's moving Super League into something slightly different. And I think even social media now and word on whatever a grapevine might be is that there are some people within the organisation of the competition who are looking potentially at 14 clubs. And the issue that might be that that's the way to go. And clearly no detail about how those 14 clubs would be established or criteria to bring them into the competition, whether that would be all in one go or over a phased period of time, what they would need to provide to be included, whether the drawbridge would be pulled up when you got to 14 clubs. All of that, I think, should be discussed at the same time as whether Toronto come back or not, because it's not about what you do for the expediency sake of having a 12th club at Magic Weekend in 2021. It's about when you go to Skyton and negotiate this contract. And I think we all know that there isn't another broadcaster out there that's going to bite their hand off. There's going to be no battle between Murdoch and Packer this time to see.
Amazon.
They're not interested.
Channel 4.
I mean, they might be interested if basically they got the rights for virtually nothing. But clearly there isn't going to be a bidding war. You might be able to hive off the competition and give a little bit to 3 or 4 people, but the likelihood of getting double what you get at the moment is pie in the sky. So clearly we need to decide what we are offering, not for the next round of the deal, but for going forward. And I think if Toronto is an option, if promoting a team under a license is an option, if moving to 14 clubs is an option, this is the debate we need to be having. And Toronto needs to fall into that debate. To me, it's not just about the new investor in the Wolfpack. And, they'll do the normal checks on him and he'll either come up to scratch, or in 3 years' time we're going and we should never have allowed this bloke to take the club because he didn't have the resource. But
that's the point there, Phil, though. Yeah, we'll do the normal checks, and that's worked.
Exactly.
In the past, hasn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So, I think it's a bigger question than do Toronto come back. I think we'll all have our views on under what conditions they should be allowed back in, and they're gonna say they want to be in Super League or they're not interested. Will they get a share of the existing deal? Would a good probationary punishment for not completing the competition this year be that the final year of the current deal they still don't get access to anything, but that channel is now open for discussion with any future television deal, and all of that I think needs to be openly and honestly on the table and in discussion. And it's not just about who this bloke is.
Yeah, I think if with this new owner, I think there'll either be an understanding that either they get a full share going in the future or a half share, or as you said, that discussion changing, because otherwise there's just no point taking it on.
No,
you'll just millions every year, and particularly next year when games in Canada, home games in Canada, are probably a long shot. At least at this stage, we don't know what will happen. But with COVID, it's not a certainty. Put it that way. If they don't get a distribution, you're just going to lose money.
Here's another question then, which I will pose and you can answer so that I don't get slated for it. There's no relegation this year. The clubs are in the last year of a television deal. They need some degree of security to get through 2021. And we all hope by the end of 2021, there'll be a very successful World Cup and some idea of what money is going to be pumped into the sport by its major broadcast partner. Should we now be announcing that there is no relegation in 2021 either? So if Toronto come back, they got a fair crack at their new investor not just losing too much money and finding he hasn't got a team, that Neil Hudgell or whoever is passing the whole KR reins on to know that for the next year they are safe with their investment. There can be some kind of a transition. Michael Carter, I know, who is working extremely hard behind the scenes to keep Wakefield going and his new stadium on track, and apparently there is movement a little bit on that, but there's a limit to what can be done in these circumstances. Should we now be saying, acknowledging the fact that there are a couple of clubs in the Championship who would immediately be on the phone to their lawyers, that 2021 should be a season without promotion relegation to stabilise the sport?
We all like lawyers, don't we, Phil? Look, I think, that's an interesting one. I think, as you said earlier, probably now, the last few months have been the time to actually overhaul the whole game in the three divisions and make some strong decisions. But that hasn't happened and doesn't seem to be happening. So, you would think if going to Sky or any potential broadcaster with an idea of a future competition, effectively, we do need to go to a broadcaster and say, look, what do you want? How can you're going to give us X amount of money and maybe a little bit more. We'll play games on Tuesday nights. We'll kick off at midnight to get the TV market in wherever, we have to be flexible in that way because we're not in a strong enough position to be making demands. So if Sky wants a 14-team competition, 14 full-time teams, then that would ideally be, I think, the way to go. But, I think we do need to be flexible on that.
Forgive my ignorance. Would the would the Australians prefer the Rugby League World Cup to include New South Wales and Queensland as separate teams, so we can fit in International Rugby League and Origin at the same time at the end of seasons?
I think Queensland thought they were the Australian team anyway a couple of years ago when they sung their terrible. If you've never heard it, their winning song is like yippee yippee. It's like some sort of Deliverance-esque rednecks fest song, which tended to piss off the New South Wales. There was a bit of an issue, I think, a division within the Australian team. This is going back, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. The whole concept is stupid. The best way, I think, to get Australia or parts of Australia on board with the international game is for them to be beaten and beaten regularly. So they need Tonga to keep, the rise of Tonga has been a real positive because Australia's gone, hang on, this is a real contender here. This is a team we can play and they can beat us. And there's massive, there's big crowds. So they've tapped into that. They've played Tonga, twice in 2 years, which is a lot of games for the Kangaroos. New Zealand's always there. They're going to play. And England, unfortunately, hasn't beaten Australia, since you're in school, Rich. So at least in a series. That's the way. And one of the reasons Origin has become so good because you can sort of say it's what would it be, 34 best players in the world, maybe 34 of the best 40 or 50 players in the world in a really high quality contest. But I agree. The whole idea to bring Origin at the end of the season is a nonsense. Keep it where it is. It's worked. And then while Origin's on, you have the other Pacific nations and you have England playing tests. And then we need a dedicated window. And that's what we need. Because I think International Rugby League in the last, well, obviously not this year, but before the last World Cup it actually had been getting some momentum. The 2009 World Cup in the UK was fantastic. And it had been some momentum with the Six Nations, with Scotland in 2016 and the rise of Tonga. Samoa, the players available to Samoa just keeps getting better and better. Same with Fiji, with Kikau and Makasivo. Papua New Guinea, they've gotten a lot better, obviously, as you guys know, because they embarrassed Great Britain. Things are moving in the right direction. We just need to have a window and, not move Origin around. But the problem with Origin is it's so big and it makes so much money that people don't understand that, Origin will make several $1 million, but New Zealand versus England won't. That's just the reality.
I have two observations, one of which may well be another contender for stupid question of the evening. But at the moment, Origin occupies 3 weeks in the middle of the season. So if you take it out and put it at the end of the season and close the season up by 3 weeks and put Origin at the end, it doesn't affect the international game. The Australian domestic season is purely a run of domestic games into Origin, into the international game. It doesn't have to be either or. So, but the other thing is, so I think a lot of people have gone, oh, it's going to be Origin or the international. Actually, it can be both. It can be just preparation for the internationals. I think the other thing is there is a move within the NRL, unless I'm very much mistaken, to reduce the number of games. They're already at less than we are. Now, if they reduce the number of games, they have then the space to move Origin to the end of the season. So I think Mr. Volandis is actually very, very cleverly positioning people to come to terms with the fact that they're not going to play, 24 rounds, 26 rounds, that they regular season rounds, that it might drop back to 22. Well, then you've got a month where you can put Origin at the end if you want, and it doesn't affect the international game. So it might well be a headline story that they're wanting to scupper it, but actually it may enhance it, because I still hear people like Andrew Abdo saying that we really do value the international game, and we can see some merit in the fact that we can get into places and sponsors, and we can offer more opportunities to players by strengthening the international game. And at the same time, they're talking about moving Origin. I don't think it is an either or. I think we again managed to manufacture a story whereby we're fighting ourselves over something that we may not need to.
I think you're right there, Phil. I think St. Peter Volandis listens to Phil Gould a lot, and he's been banging on for years about reducing the amount of domestic games. And obviously, Rich is the big NFL fan, and they only play each other once, don't they? It's a very, very short season. I think ideally that's what they'd like, because at the moment in the NRL, it's this kind of weird hybrid where one team will play another team twice, but they only play another team once. When it used to be, you play everyone twice, home and away. So yeah, that could work. I think the worry, well, not the worry, the concern that I've seen with some people, they're saying, say Ben Hunt at the Dragons, obviously his team is going to play finals because they're rubbish. So he'll be sitting, they'll say to him, look, if you want to play Origin, you got to stay at home and train for a month. And I heard this discussed on Triple M last weekend, and they were saying, well, most people would accept that to play Origin, but perhaps not every player would be as diligent to stay home in their bubble and just train by themselves. But, they've got to be somewhat match fit coming to a game like Origin, which is much more intense and much more demanding than your average, well, even your NRL finals game, but your average NRL game.
If only they had some teams in Queensland that were likely to make the playoffs. That's the issue.
Yeah. Queensland in crisis, Phil. Your Broncos, they're, it's such a shame.
No, it's only for 1 year. Wayne Bennett get them back on track, don't you worry.
I don't like when Wigan were rubbish that year. They can't just go out and sign players to break their salary cap to stay up, because there's no relegation in the NRL.
Well, just one thing, Rich, I just mentioned, the whole and the change, the talk about changing eligibility. So, say a Tongan international can play for New South Wales or Queensland if that's where they grew up. We've already made that change. So I don't really get that whole, Katoni Staggs, who's from country New South Wales, has played for Tonga. And obviously he would be eligible for New South Wales because he's lived his whole life and was born and raised in New South Wales. But he still should be eligible to play for Tonga. So, yeah, it's down to the selectors of New South Wales and Queensland, I imagine, to make those decisions. But you wouldn't think it would be smart to fill your team with Tongan, Samoans, Fijians who are born in Australia but playing for those countries, because the Australian team is going to be fairly weak.
Good.
Yes, which may be what the game needs as well. That's another point, yeah.
What the NRL should do, not that I want to give advice that they're unsolicited, but in the way that the NFL seem to, and I don't know how much the TV deals are in this country for the NFL, but they get plenty of free-to-air TV coverage. The NRL should give, Try Time, the thing Sky shows a filler. The NRL should really give that to someone like ITV4 and just get it on terrestrial TV for people to watch, because it might sell a few shirts or something. I don't know. Might give some more interest to rugby league, but I don't know. Just an idea.
Do you know what we need to do more of? And I think, again, it's not something that we haven't mentioned before, and it's very easy to talk about, and it requires some degree of finance to do it. But the biggest incident this weekend in the world of rugby league was the sending off of Chad Townsend. Sonny Bill's debut and all that, and some wonderful offloads in Super League and all that. But what seems to have resonated more on social media globally has been the incident with Kallum Ponga, where A, Chad Townsend took his head off, B, should he have been sent off, and C, should he have had a ban that rules him out of the rest of the season. And all of that, the NRL had on their social media virtually the second it happened. And it was replayed ad nauseam, shown from different angles, different comments on it. It was getting traction in America. People go, "Hey, have you seen this that goes on in what, it's an attack to the head?" And we need to be clever about that. We had some absolutely fantastic tries scored this weekend, and full credit to Super League's social media team for getting a compilation of the best tries and the wonderful offloads. But it came out probably 2 days after. And we just need to be really smart at getting stuff that will promote the game into the channels that people now watch it we live in a world whereby if you can grab somebody, even for a few seconds, you might buy some more time with them. And that Townsend thing was manna for the NRL. When Kallum Ponga's tooth if it was that flew out of his mouth when he got hit, you could almost see the marketing guys going, "We've got something here. This weekend is sorted. Our job is done." And they were brilliant at exploiting it.
We could have had Tommy Makinson's squirrel kip go viral, and we could have had,
But if that's what it takes, let's be cute about it and promote the hell out of it.
We could have had a reality TV show, Tommy Finds Searches for Love,
Just Tommy's tackle. It does it.
Or Liam's tackle. What would it be?
I can't believe that the Sun newspaper edited the video of the incident to cut out me saying he's grabbed him by the bollocks. The Sun newspaper upholding, family values in 2020. Let's talk about action on the field. I should say, people. CG says it's nonsense, by the way. Why would Championship clubs spend a penny next year if it's totally meaningless? It's their prerogative, I guess. If it extends to 14 teams, it won't be meaningless. We'll find out. But your point is duly noted. Thursday's game is much better than Friday's, it's fair to say, as we all hate Thursday night rugby league. But it started with a belter because Hull Kingston Rovers, against some of the odds, beat Wigan 34-18. Great performance from Tony Smith's side. Everyone's second favourite team, John, apart from obviously Hull FC fans.
Yeah, it was a great game, wasn't it? Kane Lynette just rolled back the years. It was a wrecking ball down that edge, and Greg Menniken reaped the benefits. And it was great to see Jordan Abdul. We've not seen him much this year. Last year was sensational for London, but he ran the show, and it was good to see Holcar, the way they play, get rewarded for their endeavour, because it can be hit and miss, but it all kind of clicked in that game, and Wigan really had no answers.
There's great credibility sometimes in a competition when bottom can beat top. And I think, we're looking for reasons why maybe ending promotion relegation this year might have meant some going through the motions. When a team at the bottom can put up a performance as good as that to take down the side that we're leading, then everybody benefits. I think the other thing is being in the ground. You can't get that sense of atmosphere clearly, but what you do get is you really do get to hear the teams. And what was noticeable on that game more than any other since we've come back is that Hull Cow were incredibly vociferous. They had 3 or 4 players who really did get into their teammates, were encouraging. All the defensive wins, there were slaps on the back, there was shouting into the line as to, whose responsibility it was to move in or move out or move up. Wigan were virtually silent. And at the time where the game was slipping away from them, there was no real leader out there who was galvanising the troops. I thought that was really interesting. Body language is something that you probably don't see enough when you're in the heat of a game and everything else is going on and your attention is drawn by a million things. When all you can hear are the guys on the field. Hull KR won that game as much on their enthusiasm in each other's and belief in each other as Wigan did in not being able to turn it around, because they were going, right, well, somebody needs to save us here, and I'll wait and see if it's the guy inside me or next to me or whatever. So that was really telling. Thought Rovers have got better each game they played, made a lot of mistakes with the way they want to play against Warrington, got punished for it, made less mistakes against St Helens, were competitive for the first half, made very few mistakes against Wigan, and looked like a team it was almost impossible to defend against. I think there were three people that really stood out. You mentioned Abdul, the extra space that the new rules give you. He was outstanding. I thought Jez Litton was superb running the middle, and clearly was given a license to say, if you want to go in your own 20-metre line, then you go. Don't wait until you're in the right part of the field. And the guy who I thought had the best game I've seen him play was Will Dagger. I thought he was absolutely superb at the back. And gave, again, confidence came from the back. There were a couple of times when Wigan players broke through and Dagger pulled them down in a one-on-one, and I thought he was absolutely superb if he can keep that going. It was just great. Hull KR have made no secret of that's how they want to play. Wigan are still caught at the moment between trying to be physically dominant and what the new rules allow you to do. The number of times Wigan got caught on the last tackle, running the ball close in, just said a lot about the way they're playing at the moment, and they're going to have to, I know they're joint top of the league, so they clearly haven't done a lot wrong yet this season, but I think they're going to have to change because the new rules may well find them out.
I mean, John, I've never played the game, so I can't comment on the game, but I'm on social media, so I can comment on social media, and I just wonder sometimes if people should, in the build-up to games, not go on social media and then prove themselves to, not be the smartest.
Oh, look, we've all done it, Rich. We've all done it. I think sometimes we all need to take things not so seriously and not get so uptight and have a laugh at ourselves. But I know what you're referring to. I question for both of you guys, because I don't know the answer. What has actually happened to Sean O'Loughlin? Will we see him play again? Because he's just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth.
Due to be playing on Saturday.
Is that a fact?
No, it's probably he's named in the squad. Whether he'll play or not is...
But no, there's been little, for such a pivotal player for Wigan for so long, England captain, etc. Seems to have been little talk about him and, what injury he has and whether he'll be back. And surely you would think this is his last season, because you'd have to kind of worry about his long-term health if he keeps putting his body through, what seems like torture. But there seems to have been very little news about him or when we might see him.
Signing for Wakefield, I gather.
Well, Leeds wanted him, didn't they? So
no, they genuinely did, but they missed him on Thursday. They missed him and Tommy Luluai. Yeah, because I think as the game was starting to slip away from that try just before half time was sort of almost changed the dynamic a little bit. It put Wigan a little bit of doubt in their mind, and Hull KR I think thought, actually if we can keep doing this, we got a chance. But it needed a Luluai or an O'Loughlin to just sort of at the start of the second half say, right, we're dominating this, we're going to get back in the game, and that wasn't there for me.
Yeah, they're both leaders, and they're both the sort of players who can lead by example. Whether it be with a big hit or a specific play, whatever. So I think they are missing. You miss that kind of experience and knowledge.
Indeed. It was a great performance from Hull KR. Don't want to take anything away from them and give all the discredit to Wigan, so to speak. A player who I was impressed with and have been for years is Elliot Minchella, and I still go back to what I said at the time. If only he'd chosen his friends wiser, who knows where his career would have been? Because
probably Wigan.
If he'd have been a famous player at the time, he would have been drummed out of Leeds and had to start all over again down at the bottom. And he's showing his class at the moment and took his try well.
Yeah, and I think there are quite a few players within the ranks of Hull KR that are at that point to prove moment in their careers. And if you can eliminate mistake, then the way they play is difficult to defend against, and they can be a threat when the ball, every offload stuck. And they are just a joy to watch. Whether you support them or not, the way they played, particularly in the second half, because we'd seen the week before against St Helens that they'd put up a fabulous first half display, but you almost knew after an hour the way that game was going. In this one, they gradually built into that second half, and the longer it went on, you just thought another 2 minutes, and Wigan aren't going to have enough time to get back into this. And they are, I think we've all got time for the way Tony Smith has his philosophy of how the sport should be played, and that was a near perfect example of it on Thursday night.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the offload game, it was quite similar to what St Helens did. Their ability to keep the ball alive, particularly with these new rules, defences are just getting tighter and tighter, and the other team falls off more and more tackles, and you take advantage, and that's what they were able to do. It is really exciting to watch. I think the standard, we have seen a bit of a throwback to some more natural play this year than in previous years, and I think the rules have been great for that.
Surely you must have had a call from the legend about this then, Phil, because I know he called you all the time. He must be loving all this vision awareness and throwing the ball around.
He said after Thursday's games that he's absolutely fine with high-scoring entertainment. That's the style he wants to see. None of this 3-0. Give him 37-30 every day of the week.
24-all at half-time, this one, Salford and Castleford. Cast been in a reverse of their recent form, going behind early this time and then hitting back to win. Very impressive performance. Salford looking much better than they did the week before as well. And an entertaining game all round.
Yeah, very, very enjoyable, this one. Huge armour and tension, exactly what you wanted. And there wasn't a lot of great defence, but it was easy on the eye, wasn't it? It was a good sugar hit for the veins.
At 30-all, we were looking up, was it going to be the highest scoring draw of all time, and what was the record number of points by a team in defeat? And actually, the last 20 minutes were actually. I know there's an element of fatigue that builds into this, which means more mistakes. But actually, defences were pretty good in those closing stages as well. The difference were probably Liam Watts' ability to get the ball away in the tackle, and I know that sometimes with Liam, you're going to get more penalties than perhaps you'd like, but if the price of that is more attacking creativity, then he came out massively on the side of credit in that game. But Paul McShane is back to the form that saw him picked by Sean Wayne for whenever we may next play an international. Sniping about the middle, thought he was great. And I think the one thing that becomes apparent, and again, it's something that the legend has talked about a lot, is getting that balance between your halves. And when you've got two that both want to play that compromises the roles of both, then it's a difficult balance. So I'm not sure Jake Truman and Richardson have yet worked as a partnership, both incredibly talented individuals, but who was the dominant one in that partnership? Richardson on his own this week through Truman's injury revelled in the responsibility. It was all down to him. I think having Matautia was there to do a lot of defensive duties, but the creativity and attack was solely down to Richardson, and he revelled in that. It sort of worked for them, and it was a game you could not take your eyes off. You didn't know who was going to win. Cass were brilliant coming back from the early deficit, but Salford were fantastic to get out to such a lead. So, fine, 2 points went to the Tigers, their first since the resumption, but No, it's a neutral. You could not have turned that game off.
Listening to Darryl Powell for the last few weeks, he does seem to think that they are somewhere close to perhaps challenging for some silverware this year. Obviously, they've got the Challenge Cup tie against Hull at the weekend, and we'll speak more about the early birds in a moment. And they're going to be up there at the top end of Super League, it seems. Well, they've got to chase down St Helens. They're in a nice position at the moment, Cass. Yes, they've had that run of defeats, but they've been gradually getting better. And when they've got that halfback partnership together, they look like a superb side to watch.
Yeah, they do. I still think I'd still probably have them fifth at the moment behind St Helens, Wigan, Warrington, and Catalans, but they've definitely got the ability to break into that and get into a final, and from there it's anyone's.
Yeah, worth keeping an eye on. But injuries and the fixtures are going to determine everything, and that's why predictions are my predictions are a waste of time anyway, but particularly this year, it's impossible. I mean, they like Hull earmarked to play 2 games in 4 days. I have no idea how you can predict the outcome of the second one. We don't even know who's going to be available for it. So I think if they keep relatively free of injury, then the way they play under the new rules is going to make them a threat.
St Helens 54, Huddersfield 6. Huddersfield have got no players and seemingly not going to have a coach next year as well. Well, they will have one, but it won't be Simon Woolford, it appears. I did like the fact that he appeared to be doing his interview with Radio Leeds in his car this week pre-match, but that's quality. But he appears to be on his way back to the NRL, John.
Yeah, that was the report in the Daily Telegraph in Sydney a while ago, and I tried to get a comment from him a couple of times, didn't respond. So yeah, it seems like he'll be joining Penrith as an assistant there. It'll be almost 3 years at the end of this year that he's been in the UK, and he's sort of made some improvements. And then obviously last year was quite bad, and they've looked good at times. But at the moment, it does look a bit of a worry about them, obviously with the injuries, and they've had a few losses, been unlucky with the Golden Point and the Warrington game in terms of some refereeing decisions. But yeah, they looked well beaten against St Helens. That was really a very one-sided game. And yeah, the effort there seemed to be a bit below par than it usually is.
If I was a Huddersfield fan, I'd be concerned that Woolford isn't seeing out the job, because I think you look for improvement. And whilst they were still battling relegation last year, bringing in a core of young players does take time to bed in. And he seemed to have the respect of all the guys that are coming through. I'd be really worried that if he goes, Aidan Caesar might go, because he was instrumental in bringing him over. Caesar clearly is going to be in demand in the NRL, where there are a couple of clubs you could earmark that are desperate for a halfback that is good enough to take a team to a grand final. And it seems to be that when Caesar doesn't play, the last 2 weeks Huddersfield have really struggled for direction, and that's not to the detriment of the 2 guys that filled the halfback roles. It's just that he is such a quality player and makes people around him so much better. So I'd be concerned about that if Woolford goes, does that mean Caesar will go as well? Saints, they're just, again, so easy on the eye. Whether they got out of second gear or not is immaterial. Some of the things that they can do when they get people like Lachlan Coote and Regan Grace into space is why we watch rugby league. It's an absolute joy. Wormsley, again, outstanding. They've got the balance, I think, between playing it tough up the middle when they need to and being defensively strong with opening the ball out when they can. And James Bentley, he seems to be getting better every week wherever they play him. He's escaped a ban, I think. He's got a caution, but not been banned. They're great, and they're great because, again, they are playing it the right way. And if we end up with the top 4 teams, are 4 teams that have adapted best to the new rules and move the ball because they can, and under the way that the best teams are playing at the moment, then that's fine for me. I think the champions will be worthy.
Saints versus Penrith in the World Club Challenge in 2020. If that indeed is played. I'm not sure what more we can say about Saints and Huddersfield, because people will complain that we don't give Saints enough credit. But when they win by nearly 50 points, and you say they're great to watch, all the players are great, you want to watch them all the time. There's not really much you can say in criticism of them, other than they conceded 6 points. At least they're not dull in the way they win.
Happy birthday, Johnny Lomax. Thought he was outstanding, and clearly, because he is so good at what he does, now he doesn't even get mentioned. But on the Huddersfield side, got the chance to see Dom Young. And again, that's a blow for them, losing him at such a young age to Newcastle Knights. I thought clearly it was never going to be other than the most rearguard of actions when you're a winger and the team that you're playing against is racking up points almost at will. But he looked a beast for 19, and it's a shame that he's going to be lost to the British game before we've seen what he can do.
Not a shame for him living at Merryweather, though, Phil.
Yeah, I think he thought it was near Bondi. He's got a rude shot coming.
No, it's Bondi without all the tourists.
Or the sand, or the surf, or the ice cream.
But no, that could be a good thing for the national team, though, if he does a fun work, comes through playing week in, week out in the NRL. You are right about the Super League competition, but if the end result is a better England team that's winning World Cups and Tri-Series, etc., then that's probably going to be better in the long run. But yeah, I guess we wait and see on that.
Good to see that we're sending all our top young rugby league talent to Australia, and in return we get failed politicians. So that's really good deal there.
Misogynist and homophobic politicians too, Rich.
Yeah, maybe you could do a video to say happy birthday to rugby league
supporters.
No, there you go. And Hull FC, well, they were great last week, and now they're rubbish again. Losing 37-12 to Warrington, who had no players because they all had the COVID, or were stood down because of, I should say. 7 players out for Warrington. And it seems sometimes in team sports, and maybe this is what happened with Warrington, maybe they're just better than Hull, which they are. But sometimes when you have that adversity against you, you somehow galvanise, and Warrington certainly were galvanised as a force on Friday night.
They seem to have started to adapt really well to the new rules as well. I think they've always played a very structured game under Steve Price, but they've got natural ball players in Ratchford and Austin and Widdop and Clark. And, with the forwards they've got as well on the strike and the outside backs, they've got all the players there to excel. And they seem to be actually building some momentum. Mike Cooper was immense in the middle. And when you've got, your forwards laying a platform like that, you can get the likes of Jack Mamo, who has barely played for Warrington really, to come in and score some good tries. So yeah, I think if you're a Warrington fan, you're pretty happy at the moment.
I think the interesting thing about Warrington is the same as Castleford, that they clearly do have a pair of very talented halfbacks, but at the moment, and I think there's something that Blake Austin said that we should all reflect on in a minute, but when he is the only player out there, he clearly has to take the responsibility for how the team is going to play, and he absolutely revelled in that. I think he and Widdop will be a good partnership, but whilst they still learn each other's style of play and responsibility, Austin probably had his best game of the season so far this year. I think the other thing is moving Ratchford to loose forward and allowing Ashton to come into fullback. I think that again just strengthens the team, and that you've got the best of everything there. You've got pace out of the back. You've got creativity at the back of a scrum if there was one, and you've got your halfbacks then who can do what they need to do. I think Warrington look. For me, Ratchford is a loose forward now in the way the game is being played. You don't have to be as physical a presence. You're just another creative hand that takes pressure off the halves in the middle of the field. One thing that Blake Austin said in his interview after the game was questioned about the partnership with Widdop, and I don't think as fans we take as much notice of this as we should. As he rightly pointed out, they went on tour together, but they never played together as a partnership. They then were given extra time off when they came back from the tour before they went back to pre-season training, so they didn't get a chance to start their partnership. Widdop then got injured when they got back to training, so they didn't have a chance to start their partnership. They were just starting their partnership at the beginning of the season when they had 5 months off and couldn't really start their partnership, and they've been back for 3 or 4 games and they haven't really yet had a chance to start their partnership. So I think when you build all that in, you know, as fans, we sit there and go, well, why isn't Widdop and Austin better than than it is? And you go, well, they've had absolutely no opportunity to play alongside each other yet to any great degree. So yeah, I think Warrington will get better. Again, injuries, obviously, hopefully, are not going to scupper any team between now and then, or even another COVID outbreak. But I would also say Hull had probably a similar number of first choice players out, and yes, they didn't play well, particularly in the second half. But we are going to be looking at teams every single week that have a lack of bodies of quality because of what we're asking them to do.
Hull fans not happy on social media on Friday. After their big win the week before, they're back to clear everyone out, start all over again, scorched earth policy.
They should sack Lee Radford.
Sack Lee Radford again.
Is it the last chance?
I mean, a bit unfair to give him only 2 games.
How about
a play on his name?
Radford for Huddersfield?
Have you heard that? Or are you just making that up?
Well, you got to make something up in this program, otherwise people stop watching, won't they?
Is that like your Sam Burgess to Leeds Rhinos?
There was a chance. It was discussed.
Yeah, there's always a chance.
It was discussed between the people that matter.
You and Gary Hetherington.
Yeah.
Do go on our social media, by the way. See a great picture. I think it was Friday, of Darryl Powell and Gary Hetherington together in the Sheffield Eagles team back in the 1980s. No idea what's happened to them since then. I should say, congratulations, Neil Fox, Rugby League's greatest ever player, as voted for a panel of the Rugby Football League. So get him on that statue. And I did see someone also saying there are no Rugby League nights, which is true, and there are 10 Rugby Union nights, which might also be true. That's irrelevant. What is relevant is the amount of people in athletics and cycling who get them for one good Olympics, not least people in, there's hardly any footballers have got them, let alone Rugby League players. I think that's it. So we'll do the predictions. We won't do Cast versus Hull in the Challenge Cup because there is no point whatsoever. But we'll start. We're back at the Totally Wicked Stadium in St Helens. On Thursday, it's a 6 o'clock kickoff. It's the big one. It's the repeat of the 1960 Challenge Cup final, which Wakefield thrashed Hull in. It's Hull FC versus Wakefield Trinity. John, you can go first.
Jeez, that's a tough one to pick. 2 teams not exactly impressing at the moment. Hopefully there's not any big GPSs getting around. Look, I'd probably edge towards Hull, even though Wakefield have obviously... they've had a longer turnaround, but probably not been training in the full numbers with COVID, etc. But yeah, I'll probably lean towards Hull with no convincing ability because they haven't got Mark Sneyd. So let's just say Hull by 2.
Be interesting to see if Eddie Batty comes in on loan and makes his debut for Wakefield. I think he's exactly what they probably need at the moment. It would be a good signing. Again. Let's just hope the game gets played, that there's no further positives out of either of those 2 camps. I know they're both being tested again, I think, tomorrow. We're doing this before we see the squads, aren't we? Which is really, virtually impossible. I'm going to go Wakefield by 4 because they may just be a little bit fresher, even though they haven't trained.
Phil knows more than I about transfers into and out of Wakefield, which is interesting. It would be good to see Eddie Batty in a Wakefield shirt. Certainly add a bit more to the forwards at the minute, obviously with the lack of the GPS man, as mentioned. Don't know when he's back. I've got to go Wakefield.
Back in Bondi?
Back in Wakefield.
Oh, sorry.
Back in the red, white and blue of the mighty Trin. Wakefield by 2. It's followed by, well, this should be a good one, shouldn't it? Castleford Tigers versus Warrington. Phil, you can go first on this one.
Yeah, again, I don't know what Darryl Powell is going to do as regards keeping some players back for the cup tie, or whether he's just going to, if you're fit, you're playing, and if you're fit 2 days after, you're playing again. Both teams will take a lot from their previous performances. Warrington, marginally the more impressive on the basis of the fact that I think with the personnel they had available, that was a really good display, incredibly solid, particularly in the second half, not conceding a point. But Cass needed a win, and I think Darryl Powell said again, he could criticise some of the elements of that game, but what they needed was their first win on the resumption. So they'll have plenty of confidence. I am going to go Warrington by 6.
Yeah, I think I agree with Phil. I think Warrington are building a bit of momentum. I'm not sure if it's 3 or 4 wins in a row. Blake Austin seems to be getting a try every game at the moment. And even with missing a few players, they seem to have quite a tight bond. And yeah, just building some momentum. So I would say Warrington by 8.
I'm because I've just been rung by someone from Castleford. I'm going to go for Castleford by 6. Up the Tigers. Go on, all the sides from the WF postcode area. Up Featherston Rovers as well when they come back. Friday, 2 games. Starting with the entertainers, Hull Kingston Rovers taking on St Helens. Well, this should be a good one, John.
Yeah, didn't they only play like 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
Okay, that's great. Look, the whole KR were magnificent, but I think coming up against St Helens, even though they did trouble them in that game, I think in the first half for quite a long period, and it wasn't a big scoreline. You just can't tip against St Helens at the moment. Just too big, too strong. Alex Walmsley just has gone to a new level and is just destroying teams at the moment with his size and his presence. So I think St Helens by 14.
I think I'll go with home advantage here. St Helens at St Helens. I don't know if Hull KR can back up a display as good as that. I think that victory against Wigan will have taken a fair bit out of them. I think Saints are a machine, and without being disrespectful to Huddersfield, not sure Saints were forced to play 4th gear, 100 mile an hour for too much of that game last week. I think Christian Wolf is sticking predominantly with the players week in, week out. He's making very few changes unless he has to, and the style of play really seems to suit them. Been really impressed with Aaron Smith. Think he's matured into the player that they hoped he would be to at some point replace James Roby. So for me, I am going to go with Saints. I don't think it will damage Hull KR in any way whatsoever, but Saints by 14.
Yeah, I'll go for Saints as well by 12. That's followed by Leeds Rhinos, who have had a week off and didn't have to go to France either. They take on Huddersfield. So, Phil, you're obviously going to go for Leeds.
Yeah, well, it's the repeat of the first game back, the Golden Point extra time win. I don't think it's going to be that close. I just think Huddersfield are a bit busted at the moment. And as you say, it's precious when you can have a week of pure training. And it wasn't that Leeds were stood down for the fact that they had COVID in the camp. They have done some quite tough sessions under Richard Agar in preparation for coming back. So I'm going to go Leeds by 16.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Yeah, I think Leeds were pretty good in their last game. A bit to prove after that bad performance the week before, so I'm going to say Leeds by 12.
Yeah, I'll go Leeds as well. Leeds by 8 this time. And we finish on Saturday. Fingers crossed, in the south of France, fans back at Rugby League. Catalan Dragons versus Wigan Warriors, John.
Yeah, it seems like Catalans played last in 2019. But when they did, we were raving about them. They they have looked very good, except for the opening game against St Helens. They have looked very good, particularly Mr. Falau. And yeah, I think back at home, I think you've got to back them. So I'm going to say Catalans by 8.
I think with the schedule that teams have got at the moment, for Wigan to get on a plane and fly out there on the day is an ask in itself. I know that they've done it in the regular season, but these are difficult circumstances. The hope is that the one case that's positive at Wigan doesn't become more than that, and that they can go out and play. But it's almost like the word coming back from the Dragons is they have been absolutely kicking their heels waiting for an opponent to come over there. It can be an intimidating place at the best of times, with 5,000 fans in there who would imagine all be Dragons fans. I can't say anything other than a home win. They'll want to show the rest of the rugby league world that they are viable as a force at home, and teams should come out and play them. And I will go. I know Wigan have got to respond. They were poor last week, but I am going to go the Dragons by 20. Flamboyant.
Is that French? I'll go for.
That was just a very poor description of the word flamboyant.
I'll go for the Catalans by 12. That's a nice round number to finish things off with. Well, I hope this has worked. Anyway, and we'll try again next week, maybe. John, thank you very much for your time. Have you got irons in the fires we should be keeping an eye out for? Obviously not with revealing anything.
Not really, no. Obviously managed to get the Toronto story in after about 4 days. But yeah, that's probably a time for a wider discussion on the lack of national interest in rugby league. But yeah, nothing's at this very minute, Rich. Unfortunately, sorry to disappoint you.
That's okay. That's okay. And Phil, how's the new magazine looking? You'll be looking for some copy soon, won't you?
Yeah, production week this week. So I think we're on our third match of the month, with the other two having been postponed. So fortunately, we now have one in the can. Yes, there'll be some frantic rewriting because things are changing almost on an hourly basis in rugby league. But by Sunday night, the latest issue will be at the printers.
Well, I have written 1,600 words, although how many of them are actually about rugby league, you'll see when I email it over to you when I've re-edited it. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, John. Thanks for watching. 51 of you live at the moment, and it's been a learning process. Hopefully, next week we'll have worked out how to do it properly. Download the podcast, like, share, subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do on YouTube. And if I press this button, hopefully a video will play, and that'll be good.